Advent calendars. If you celebrate the Christmas holiday or season, you've probably had one of these at one point or another. Typically, they're filled with little chocolates or treats, one for each day leading up to Christmas, with the 24th slot being reserved for the biggest candy in the box. Sometimes, if you were lucky enough, you'd get a Lego Advent calendar with a little thing to build or a minifigure in each slot. There are tons of novelty variations of Advent calendars, but in 2006, what I believe to be the most special Advent calendar ever devised was released to the European market to promote Nintendo's holiday lineup on the DS and Wii. An Adobe Flash-developed, Nintendo-published 2D platformer that hardly gets any recognition nowadays outside of a resurgence in popularity during the tail end of 2020 due to an extremely popular YouTube video on the game. Today, I want to talk about this really special and unique game that I truly think deserves more recognition and is a perfect game to recommend around this time of year. I introduce to you Upixo in Action, Mission in Snowdriftland. Typically shortened to just Mission in Snowdriftland, the game was created by German programmer Steve Vels and graphic artist Boyaj Sariadin of Extra Toxic, also known as Tons of Bits, with the soundtrack being composed by Fabian Del Priore, all practically on a day-by-day basis, with each level being completed just one day or sometimes hours before the updates were set to go live, all throughout the entire month of December 2006 leading up to Christmas Day. Released on December 1st, 2006, the game functions as an advent calendar, with each door being a level, and each day on the calendar unlocking on that given day of the month, provided that you've gotten to that level, of course. Throughout the 4 distinct worlds, there are 6 levels, each with a big-ass advertisement for a particular Nintendo game or system on the side, consisting of games like Super Princess Peach, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Another Code, Ace Attorney, and much more. By getting to the end of each level, you're able to watch trailers for a given game, look at screenshots, or download icons or ringtones to use, with the 24 snowflakes in each level rewarding you with a special download if you were to obtain all of them, which proves a lot more challenging than you'd think. The game's story setup is simple. Pix, an evil penguin who's lost some of the pixels in his head, turning him into a villain, hatches another evil scheme to take over Video Game World by breaking into Upixo headquarters and stealing the files to a ton of video games, specifically Nintendo video games. Unsure of what to do as Pix has retreated to Snowdriftland, the coldest, most isolated part of Video Game World where no regular could venture, the heads at Upixo task Chubby Snow with the job, a snowman who can't stop being given subpar roles in the games he's in, now on an adventure of his own to collect the 24 snowflakes across the game's 24 levels, retrieve the files back from Pix, ultimately defeat him, and save Video Game World. If you're at all familiar with games made in Adobe Flash, you'd be absolutely astonished to see just how much polish went into making this game a genuinely superb 2D platformer, just like I was when I first played it. The keyboard controls are absolutely excellent, using the arrow keys to maneuver around and being able to jump with either the up arrow key or the spacebar, which I think is really nice accessibility-wise. Being able to tightly control your movement and easily adjust your jump midair feels incredible, and once you master that along with the many mechanics and obstacles that you'll come across along the way, like tipping or sinking platforms, spikes, and the many charming enemies, you'll be breezing through these levels like they're nothing. I cannot reiterate enough just how fun this game is to play and control. Literally no Flash game even comes close to this. I'd say the closest Flash-developed platformer in terms of quality would maybe be Super Mario 63, and even then Mission in Snowdriftland triumphs over that tenfold. The sprite work, the level design, the level graphics, and the music are all absolutely fantastic, and the sprite work goes a long way in filling everything to the brim with charm. I mean, just look at Chubby Snow himself. His constant smile as he runs along the snowy terrain that fills up each level just makes you wish you could cuddle him like some cute and cuddly little marketable plushie. The levels themselves are actually quite challenging, but only if you're going for all of the snowflakes, which honestly feels like the meat of the game, as otherwise everything just feels like a quick breeze. The runtime of the game is probably only around 2.5 hours to 100% complete, which is great for people who just want to sit down and play a game front to back in a quick session. Going back to the game's levels, there are 4 distinct areas, them being the lake, forest, mountain, and cave. I personally found the opening levels of the lake to actually be pretty tricky and are definitely some of the toughest levels when it comes to getting all the snowflakes, especially when these tough to complete levels are at the front of your playthrough, and I'd say it's all really to do with most of these lake levels having water present, which acts as an instant death if you touch it, and these leaping fish bones don't help, as if they hit you, you're headed straight down there. Not to mention the teetering platforms that are pretty hard to jump off of to nab some of the snowflakes, but once you get that 24th snowflake and make it past the finish line, oh boy does that feel good. The forest levels feel a lot more expansive, requiring a lot more exploration if you want to find all the snowflakes, with a brand new set of enemies occupying these dense, foggy, swampy woods. You've even got some spiders crawling around on webs, introducing a Mario World-esque climbing mechanic. The gameplay and physics here were heavily inspired by Mario World's gameplay after all. There's some sinking log platforms and firebugs that can be tough, but they're not that bad. What's really tricky is the last level of this world, because finding the hidden heart container, in which there is one at the end of every world, requires a lot of backtracking if you want to get all the snowflakes and it at the same time. And don't even try doing that in the last level of this game. Shit's not even possible, but we'll get there. The mountain world reuses a lot from the first world, but I honestly don't mind that at all. The music and level design feels completely fresh compared to the first 6 levels, and having the levels focus a lot more on precise platforming with tinier platforms in the shape of ice pillars, having to ride along a giant mammoth and weave through ice bugs to get the snowflakes is super fun, making this probably my favorite world in the game if I'm to be honest. The final world, the cave, can be super tough and can also be really varied in its designs. You've got the basic ice cave look, but go deeper down and you'll find yourself met with volcanic magma, dodging scorpions and firebugs along with some of the more tougher obstacles in the game. That final heart container is so rewarding to get, especially that last set of snowflakes as well. Although El Pix's the final boss isn't all that much, he's super easy to deal with, especially if you've gotten all the additional heart containers by this point. He'll drop some enemies down, use them to bounce up on his ship when he flies across, and when he comes down on one of the 2 sides, well, it's as easy as just jumping on him. After he's defeated, all is just, well, in Snowdriftland. Chubby is hailed as Upixo's new hero, El Pix gets a graphics patch now being just as popular as a hero as Chubby himself, the professor and the penguin mother get engaged for whatever reason, and the cave penguins get hired at the circus. That's it. Upixo, an action mission in Snowdriftland, stayed in service until January 14th, 2007, and was taken offline after that as the ad campaign that Nintendo considered the game as was over. For many, they never thought that this lovely, adorable, intuitive, and unique platformer would ever see the light of day ever again. Until 2010, when they made a version of the game to promote indie games on WiiWare, around the same time the developers had released their other Flash game, Chick Chick Boom, on WiiWare. But after that, the game was thought to be lost forever. Just a blip in Nintendo and Extra Toxic's history, with Chubby Snow to be forgotten as the game hadn't been archived on any Flash game website. That was until 8 years later, when a member on Spriter's resource uploaded all of the game's sprites to the site, prompting a lot of fans to ask how the hell did they find the game, most notably YouTuber Nick Robinson, who were told that user P-P found the game on Extra Toxic's website, tucked away with all of the other microsites that they had made advertising many big games over the years. This discovery prompted Nick to reach out to the aforementioned Steve Vels, making continuous contact and interviews with him for his video on this very game, which now has 1.7 million views at the time of writing this video and is how I personally found out about this game. At the end of the video, Steve and Boaj called Nick to reveal to him their plans on how they're going to preserve Mission in Snowdriftland, as despite being backed up on Flash archives like Flashpoint, which is how I played the original version, the game downloads levels and other parts of the game from the original website's servers, meaning if they ever get shut down, the original will be inaccessible permanently. So, Steve and Boaj, through Nick's video, announced and showcased the opening levels from a ground-up remake of Mission in Snowdriftland made in the Unity engine, complete with the original character sprites and redrawn level assets and backgrounds. The video released on Christmas Eve in December of 2020, and successfully drawn in a lot more eyes on this project than it would have ever received otherwise. And hell, without this video, this remake probably wouldn't exist in the first place. A Kickstarter was eventually held to fund the game, which is how I got my lovely marketable plushie of Chubby, along with a really nice postcard, with Nick Robinson making a second video in October 2021 where he visits the Tons of Bits studio in Germany, playtested the game, and promoted the Kickstarter. On December 1st, 2021, Mission in Snowdriftland's remake finally hit Steam. Initially, the remake was released as just a simple, straight remake of the original, with some quality of life and nice little tweaks added like snow effects when running and jumping around, some additional graphics and cutscenes, etc. One really neat change was how they handled taking out all of the Nintendo advertisements that were baked into the original. Instead of El Pix stealing files from those very specific 2006 Nintendo games, he instead steals artifacts from games of old, and at the end of each level, you get to see what said artifacts are, as they're then held at the base where the original files were in the Flash version. You've got references to Space Invaders, Mario, Pokemon, Frogger, Mega Man, Animal Crossing, and even Tons of Bits' own Chick Chick Boom, among many others. On Christmas Eve later that month, an additional bonus level was added for players who managed to collect the game's 576 snowflakes, and let me tell you, this level was hard. The level is split into 4 sections where you need to track down the 24 snowflakes in each section before being allowed to move on, with the entrance to each area acting as a checkpoint. I'd say it took me around an hour to an hour and a half just to beat this level alone. It is tough, although for your efforts you are rewarded with the final artifact, the Golden Snowflake. One of the stretch goals reached on the Kickstarter was to add a mini-boss to each of the game's worlds. At the end of November 2023, these were finally implemented, along with secret areas in each of the game's 24 levels being added in just last month, with a new collectible being added in each one, rewarding the player with a new level once collected. Actually talking about the remake itself, this improves upon the original in absolutely every way. The game is no longer enclosed in this little tiny box and is instead displayed in this wonderful widescreen format, which really does this game so many favors. Being able to see much further ahead of you than ever before is truly such a blessing, especially when you're playing a game with type platforming such as this. Speaking of type platforming, the controls here are even more phenomenal than before. Keyboard controls return, of course, although the up arrow key is seemingly gone, with the spacebar being the sole jump button now, although that's definitely only something I would really nitpick. And I don't even play this game with the keyboard because this new version adds controller support, and let me tell you, this shit feels smooth as butter to play on a controller. I swear, every now and then, I'll plug a controller into my computer and flick on Mission in Snowdriftland just to experience some good controller feel. Chubby just feels even more responsive and intuitive than ever before, with this game genuinely being one of the most tight and smooth platformers that I think I've ever played. Like, I swear to God, this shit feels utterly phenomenal to play. Those little extra snow effects I mentioned earlier, the widescreen, the redrawn level assets and backgrounds, the high quality music rips mixed with so many quality of life improvements absolutely make this the definitive version of the game already, and that isn't even including the extras that I mentioned earlier. The mini-bosses themselves are actually really challenging, especially the later ones against Frostwing in World 3 and Scorpio in World 4. Much more difficult than the actual final boss, as Elpix is still just as easy as he was before despite some minor changes to his fight. One basic enemy that is much more difficult in this game is the Mama Penguin. In the original, and when this remake first launched, you could defeat her easily by just jumping on her like any other enemy. But one update introduced a mechanic that made it so you couldn't defeat her no matter what, which makes her significantly more difficult to get past, which honestly became really frustrating to me. So I guess that's really the only change that I don't necessarily like at all. One change that was present at launch that I loved was how they made the mountain world so much more original and distinct compared to World 1. Adding in the purple and gray hues to the level assets went a really long way in making everything just that much more vibrant and memorable for me. One nitpick that I have is that the character sprites in here aren't all too pixel perfect, but even then that isn't that big of a deal as you're constantly in motion with Chubby anyway. The secret areas that launched just recently are actually really neat. I like that whenever you go into a cave that the music becomes reverberated and it just sounds so ethereal and cool. I like that the new collectible is glitch pixels, with them potentially being why Elpix got fucked up in the first place. I think it's awesome that when you approach them that the entire screen and music becomes really glitched, with pixels on your screen dying, the screen warping, etc. I also think that the unique enemies that occupy these areas, designed by the highest tier backers from the Kickstarter, I wasn't one of them, but here's me in the backers lounge in the game anyway, are actually really cool, with their mechanics going a long way at making these areas feel fresh and unique, especially when some of these new enemies feel like nice variations on pre-existing enemies and obstacles from the game already. The final level unlocked by getting all of these is such a mindfuck. It's just an entire level comprised of incredibly glitched and warped terrain from each of the 4 worlds, which can sometimes be extremely hard to navigate with the fucked up gravity and whatnot, feeling like you're playing a 2D Mario Galaxy level or something. Either way, the secret areas, the glitch level, the mini-bosses, and the final bonus level are all phenomenal additions that make this already superior remake worth the price of admission that much better of a deal. I don't think I can properly express to you just how much I would recommend this game to anyone who is interested in it. This is a game that any Nintendo fan, any platformer fan, any 2D platformer fan will love. If you haven't heard of this game or haven't played it yet, I implore you to try it out. It is so cheap on Steam, running for $7.99 Canadian and also just $12.99 on Switch. Hold up, Switch you say? Yes. Last month on November 29th, Diplodocus Games, responsible for porting Cord Kid 64, Siactro's Torre series, McBat 64, and Super Kiwi 64, brought Mission in Snowdriftland to the Nintendo Switch. Talks of the game being ported to Switch were as early as when Stephen Boage first announced the Unity remake back at the end of 2020, and 4 years later, it is finally a reality. Chubby is home. I mean, what other platform could this game fit better on other than Nintendo? This game started out as a Nintendo advertisement, and now it's here on Nintendo Switch. There's really only one caveat to this port at the time of writing though, and that's that the Secret Areas update, released on Steam just 2 days before the Switch port, is not currently part of this version, making it the lesser of the 2 versions as of now, although I'm certain that it'll come to Switch in no time. Otherwise, this port is fantastic. No complaints to be had here, just the same game playable on a home console. I've been recommending Mission in Snowdriftland to friends ever since its remake released 3 years ago, and that's why I'm here recommending it to you now. From the moment I first played this game, I knew it was something special. There's a reason I backed its remake, there's a reason I've replayed it so many times, and there's a reason I bought it for a second time on Switch. This smooth, intuitive, wintry themed platformer deserves your attention, especially during the holiday season. This game deserves to be remembered as a damn good footnote in Nintendo's quirky history during the mid-2000s, and any Nintendo fan should absolutely adore this game, especially for those who love their platformers, as this feels like it was plucked right from the bunch of Mario and Kirby. Please give this game a shot. You will not be disappointed. I cannot wait to see what Tons of Bits does next, whether it be a port of their other indie game, Chick Chick Boom, or something entirely new. Either way, whatever they do next will be great. I just know it. Mission in Snowdriftland 2, anyone? Thanks for watching, and happy holidays. And Mama in her kerchief, and I in my cap, had just settled down for a long winter's fucking sleep. I want to go to bed.